It's lovely to have you here. It's lovely to be talking about the film. So I'm just going to jump straight in. Philip, well done. This is your first feature. It's a brilliant achievement. We don't see a lot of kind of cute, funny Western revenge style narrative set in Cavan. How did you come up with the idea? Was it in your head a long time, or what was the genesis of Redemption of a Rogue?
Garrett, yeah, so I suppose it has been in the head swimming around for quite a while. It's one of those stories that kind of stayed with me for years. And I probably just didn't really have the courage to write it for a long time. So a lot of it comes from personal experiences, believe it or not. Even though it's set in a fictional village, Ballylock, it is County Cavan and very much a world that I grew up in. And I grew up with those characters and grew up with those people, those lovely, larger than life personalities. And I guess the humor that people have in Cavan is a sort of droll wit. It's a dark humor, can be sneery at times, and it's always sardonic. But I guess that was the world I grew up in, and that was a huge influence and inspiration for the whole world of the film. And then I guess the other elements that came into it as regards to story and the surrealism, and my parents are very religious and very Catholic, and I was always growing up with lots of religious figurines. So that idea of the supernatural was always kind of there as a kid, and it kind of stayed with me. And I kind of believed that the Catholicism is the most hallucinogenic of all the religions in many ways. So that was kind of stayed with me. But a lot of the events of like getting beaten up on a dance floor for having a good time, the GEA ruling the local village like a dictatorship, all those things are what I grew up with. And then I guess the storyline itself was, I did a good bit of traveling in my 20s, and I was mad to get away from Cavan for whatever different reasons I had to escape from. But I always was coming back with my, tail between my legs and this guilt riding on my shoulders, and, kind of like a prodigal son, and having to face up to those things that kind of escaped that. And that kind of story kind of stayed with me about this guy returning home, this prodigal son, but he's got only one day to live. And I wasn't quite sure what form that would take. And that took me a while to figure out. And then I guess the element of surrealism of where the mind goes and someone who wants to kill himself, there are kind of things that I wanted to kind of address and show the absurdity of what happens and where the mind can go in that state. And to do it in a way that was, as honest as I could, but also to show the surrealism and how dark and how that can be. And no matter how unbearable things can get, that humor can lift you out of those situations. So all those things, I guess, were kind of in a spin cycle. And even though it is quite abstract and absurd, it is coming from quite a personal, honest place, I think.
That certainly comes across, because I grew up in a small town in West Cork, and what you're talking about, the GA thing, spot on. And that scene where the funeral's cancelled and someone is like, will there still be sandwiches? I've literally heard someone say that when a funeral was cancelled because of a snowstorm. So it feels very real and like, well, specific. It's kind of universal, and I'll come to that in a minute. But while it has those kind of very relatable things, and it also like, it has this, I don't want to say Tarantino-esque, it's too lazy, but like that surrealist style you mentioned, it's very heightened and kind of genre, and those little kind of intertitles. It works wonderfully as a structure. Was it always written like with that kind of tone and style in mind, or did you have any other kind of versions of it knocking around?
Well, it's a good question, because I think Redemption of a Rogue, I wrote it in that style very much. And Tarantino, is an influence. He's one of the reasons why I fell in love with films, and so he would be a huge influence, along with many other filmmakers. But I did write Redemption of a Rogue that way. However, I was finding difficulty for a long time with this script to get a producer on board or to get people invested with it. Aaron was on board early on, thank God, and he loved the idea when we talked about the story. But I'd only €45,000 from the Cavan County. It's a very small amount of money. It's a shoestring. So when I was trying to get a producer on board, they were very rightly were saying this is not possible to make this film. So I kind of went away to Amsterdam to have a think of things, and I bottled it completely. So when I came back, I wrote this other version of the story, which was kind of lads shouting at each other in rooms. It could have been very easily done on a tiny budget, but it was kind of little plays rather than it being, going after something a little bit more cinematic and surreal and absurd. And I showed the two scripts to a friend of mine, the great writer Shane Connaughton, who co-wrote My Left Foot, and he read both versions. And that was a big crossroads for me, actually, because he said, you have to do Redemption of a Rogue. don't do this other thing. You have to do it. I don't know if he hated the other thing so much. And he actually drove up to my house and to talk about it and to kind of convince me. And I was explaining the difficulty of getting a producer, and it's so ambitious with such a small amount of money. He said, just find a way. That's all, you just have to find a way. And that was a big turning point for me.
Well, I'm glad you went with that version as well as the film we have here. You mentioned your sort of struggle to find producers. How did you go about getting Emma and Tamryn from Pale Rebel involved?
Well, Jerry McNaughton, who's executive producer on the film, he's a good friend of mine. We've done a lot of theatre in the past, and with the Gonzo Theatre. So he was on board in the film, and he was he kind of knows everyone in Dublin in the artistic scene, and he has his finger on the pulse. And I was a little bit out of it being in Cavan at the time. I was away from Dublin for a few years, and he heard about these hotshot, brilliant producers called Tamryn and Emma from Pale Rebel. So we met up with them, and I had met other producers along the way, and just instantly it just felt right. And I kind of went with my gut on a lot of things on this production, and things just fitted in. And when they're on board, it's the synergy and everything flowed really well. So
clearly. And Emma and Tamryn, yourselves, like I've seen some shorts you've done, like Dead Run, and I believe you're also on over It's in Us All, Antonia Campbell Hughes' debut, which I'm very excited to see. So you definitely hotshot, I think, written all over you, as Philip said there. But what attracted you guys to Redemption Over Rogue?
The script was just class. It was like, it's pretty simple. Like, we were like, I think we couldn't believe our luck when we were sent it, and Phil wanted to chat to us, and there was any money attached at that point. We'd not worked with a lot, so we were like, great, we can figure it out. And it was one of those times where we just said yeah and tried to figure it out later, because I think we were mad enough to go in for it. But like, Phil had a great crew as well. Like, he had a lot of great people attached, obviously, as well. But the story is just brilliant, and Philip's mind is bananas. So we were like, let's figure out how to bring this to life with him,
And Tamryn, for yourself, same story. Was it the script first, or?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I think myself and Emma at that point, like, we were just very excited to read a script that it feels very Irish, and then also not at all. You're like, I've never seen this before. Like, I've never seen an Irish film like this before. That was a huge thing for us. We were like reading a lot of stuff at the time, really trying to find our first feature, and we just weren't finding anything that really, like, I don't know, hit home for us. And we read it, and I remember calling Emma and being like, have you read it? And she was like, yes. I was like, oh my God, we have to make it. And we didn't, it was kind of serendipitous. Everything always happens the way it should, because we didn't know enough to know how hard it might be on the budget. And that was what the team needed, what Phil needed, what we needed. It was like the kind of passion for the project with a little bit of naivety, so that we could go in just all guns blazing and not afraid. And, if somebody came to me with that script today with that budget, I would know more and be like very afraid, and that would stop, I don't know, the magic from happening. So it was all very...
It's interesting you say that, because in my in the Screen Discussion series, when we talk to producers, it seems like two of the best things you can have are enthusiasm and naivety. Like, because if you knew better, you wouldn't gonna do that. And it's always the best stuff comes in. It's just like, if we would have said no, if we knew more, but you always, with the enthusiasm and that kind of naivety, you end up making something you're really passionate about. On that, Philip, just to go back to you, you'd directed The Begrudgers, which is an RT Storyland series, I believe. You have a short, The Goatee Uprising, and you did Saulu as well. Obviously, a film like this is actually, they're all quite varied and different, but was there much of a change in your own kind of workflow and prepping for this? And like, what kind of challenges and step up did you kind of notice?
Yeah, no, it was a huge step up. So, I mean, I made a couple of shorts. Diamond Boutique was another short as well. And The Begrudgers, all kind of around the same time, around 2010, 2011, 2012. And a lot of promotional videos for the Gonzo Theatre. That's how I started off really making anything from film. And they ended up being kind of short films. So, and I was making a lot of them with Finn Keenan and John McKeown. It was a different team that I had. And then I kind of got busy with theatre. The recession happened after The Begrudgers, so there wasn't really many opportunities. And I got busy making work in Dublin for the stage. So coming back to film, it's like, it was a long time later. So I was quite, it was a big step up for me, but I was able to have a great team around me. I was making theatre in Cavan with the Town Hall Cavan Art Space, and we were doing huge productions. like we did a version of Frankenstein with 150 in the cast across 4 locations across Cavan Town. We did another show called the Ship of Fools in a house and 4 stories with a huge cast as well. So the productions were getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we had this brilliant team, this sort of network of, brilliant artists, visual artists, designers, musicians, actors, set builders, carpenters, and costume designers. So there was a great team there, and that kind of underpinned everything. So the natural step I felt then to go forward was to make this film, which I had the money for a little while, but I think it was the right time to move forward. My brother was production designer, and he's quite experienced in film at that stage. So so there was a great team there, and it's down to all those people that I had around me. But yeah, it was a big step up, and I think I kind of tried to prep every single shot as much as possible, over prep nearly if I could, and I think that was important that I was able to communicate that to the producers and to Bershie, to DP, and to everyone around me. But yeah, as you mentioned there earlier, my ignorance was a blessing, I think. It really was, because everyone around me had the right attitude. It was everyone was a problem solver, and we were able to kind of figure it out in our own way. I'm not sure if it was the correct way of doing things, but we managed to find a way, and everyone was able to think on their feet and be inventive the whole way through. Like the rain machines, it costs, I think the rain machines would have blown the whole budget in 2 or 3 days. So we had a team that were called the Water Boys on set, and they built their own rain machines and invented their own machines, like huge shower heads, and that was the sort of kind of imagination we had to use.
That's fantastic, that kind of community and kind of team spirit behind it. And especially, like you were saying, with the budget, like if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to come to the cast now in a second, but you got was it a grant from Cavan County Council for 45,000 for this in the first place?
Yes, yeah.
How did you go about doing that and selling them on this? And like, how did you even manage to deliver the film with that? That's crazy.
Yeah, so the money came from a very, I suppose, obscure source. It was Cavan Arts Office, Cavan County Council. So it was a percentage for arts scheme money. So normally that money is the sculptures you see on roundabouts. So I think it was one of the first times that this was used for a film project. And it was after the Begrudgers on Storyline, and it was quite successful, and there was a great hype around filmmaking in Cavan Town itself. So I was like, okay, I'd love to find a way to make a feature film with this team that was in place around this. So, but again, I didn't know that was probably more for a low budget short nearly, but I kind of felt that if there was anywhere in the world that we could pull this off, it was in Cavan with this team around us. We could do this on this amount of money because
that's fantastic. And I mean, obviously it was helped by the fact that you had an absolutely amazing cast, 3 of whom we have with us today. We have Aaron, Aisling, Kieran, who play Jimmy, Masha, and Damien, respectively. And like you've a really good cast around them as well. Like Kevin McGahern's there. As you mentioned, Shane Conrad's in it. Pat McCabe's there. How did you go about getting your cast together? And Emma and Tamryn, I'll just follow you up with that. Like, how did you, were the cast in place when you were there? And how did you kind of view the cast? So Philip, maybe.
I think most.
Tamryn.
Oh, sorry. I think most of the cast was in place. Philip did a great job, obviously, like he knew what he was making, so there was no uncertainty there. So really Philip, to be fair, I think he did had most of the cast in place. You had a lot of contacts, Phil, and a lot of them were your mates, right? I think Kieran was the last to be brought in, but that was great.
Fantastic. And Philip, am I right in saying you wrote it with Aaron in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's fun because me and Aaron were trying to get a project up on the ground for since I don't know, for a long time, for about a decade. Aaron's busy with Druid and the Abbey Theatre while I was doing my Fringe Theatre and traveling around and backpacking and stuff. But the project never worked. So very excited about making this film. And I remember pitching the idea to Aaron, and Aaron can talk a bit more about this. And he unbelievably said he was interested from that moment on. So when I was writing the script, I had him in mind the whole way through, and it helped me really picture him from scene to scene. And then, I'd worked with Kieran, and I'd worked with a lot of the actors before with the Gonzo Theatre, or I'd seen them on stage. So pretty much everyone I'd kind of worked with at some stage, or I'd seen them a lot before. So I had it cast pretty much in my head before I came to meet Tamryn and Emma, and all that periphery cast as well. You know, we're all local stars at home in the amateur drama scene, local actors, and the whole casting of the extras was the most taxing thing I've ever done in my life, because we put out a call, and I'm not joking, there was thousands of people. Maybe they thought that there was a huge fee involved. I don't know. But I kind of felt like I wanted to see as many people as I wanted to see everyone, basically. So I was taking people in big groups at a time. But it was just wonderful to see such an interest in the film and making films at the time. And we did a big audition call in Swanland Bar and in Cavan. So yeah, it was fun to go through all those different characters and picking them out. But yeah, and I guess I tried to use as many of the community as much as the community as possible, as well as the professional actors at the core.
Well, it's a brilliant cast, like, and it's a refreshing cast, if that makes sense. There's people I'd be relatively familiar with and not familiar with, and they're all at the exact same level in it. Aaron, if I could come to you briefly, and thank you for joining us from the offices of Dunder Mifflin, it looks like.
Yeah.
Maybe this is your way of telling us you're in some kind of reboot NBC haven't announced yet. But you're a Cavan native as well, and you're involved early on, but you've kind of a different story to Philip in that you kind of left Cavan for most of your work and stuff. Like, obviously you'd written it with you in mind and you bashed it about a bit, but what attracted you to what became Redemption over it?
I think usually what Tamryn and Emma say, usually what attracts you to a project is the story. But like Philip said, we've been trying to work together for years. Like we did youth, we know each other since we're 15, and yeah, most of my work took me away from Cavan. And then, like, when myself and Philip were growing up, arts, film, theatre didn't really exist. And Philip, while I was away in Dublin, built this arts ecology in Cavan, like nearly single-handedly. He just got this collection of artists, and that all happened while I was away. So I was jealously kind of trying to look for a project to work with him to go back home. So I think he just did all this amazing work back home, running this theatre, this collective of artists, and putting an art scene in Cavan. So I think before I ever read the script, I was going to be doing this movie. Just, I suppose, out of loyalty to Philip and just wanting to be back in my hometown and putting something into that ecology. And then you're just praying that, you know, the script is going to be something good. And it was. I mean, a year before we made it, a year before like I read it, he sat me down in his office, and I think it took him about an hour and a half to explain the film. Now, usually it would, you know, you can explain what happens in a film. I say this to Philip's credit, by the way, you can usually describe a film in 5 minutes, but like he would describe what would happen in the film beat for beat.
So he was live storyboarding it, essentially.
Very much so, yeah. All that, this shot's going to be like Tarantino, and this scene it's like that part in The Big Lebowski. And Philip isn't afraid of metaphor, and he's not afraid of, you know, politics. So he'll describe what he's trying to say with the film. And I was just like, you know, like I said, I was on board anyway, but there's a very cynical part in my head that went, I don't know if he knows you can't make this on 45,000, especially when 80% of the film takes part in the ring. Because, you know, I've worked in professional film before, and I know what happens in terms of rain machines. I don't know anything about budgeting or anything like that, but I kind of had a sense from, you know, Philip's not lying when he would say that he would be putting these shows on with a cast of 150 people that might go on for the duration of 3 days. So I can only say that it's a testament to, again, his naivety and his enthusiasm and his ability to get a team, the most amazing team of people, to get enthusiastically behind the project. So once I kind of felt it's not my problem how he gets the movie made. If he gets it made, it's going to be something spectacular. And thankfully, the script that arrived was exactly what he said it would be a year previously. And it was it was a gift of a role to play and a gift of a film, but like, you know, just immensely proud to be going back to your hometown to do the most challenging film, like on screen and off screen ever. And just, I think there was so much faith in that project. It was like just one of the most, it was one of the most amazing experience and a unique one. And I don't think it's like lightning in a bottle. I don't think it'll ever be captured again, you know.
I think that's true. Like just even reading up like a few interviews you've done, looking at other interviews, the story like behind it is just, it generally sounds beautiful. Like it sounds like how a film should be made, with just enthusiasm, grace, and will. Aisling, if I can turn to you, you play Masha, who's a brilliant character as well. Are you a Cavan native as well yourself, or how did you get involved? No, you're muted.
No, I'm not. No, I'm from Dublin. I'm definitely from Dublin. Yeah, I'm not.
And how did it come your way? Had you worked with Philip before, or how did the role of Masha?
I hadn't actually. I was in a play, You Can't Have Monkeys in the House, I think. That was in the New Theatre, and I think Philip had gone to see me, and he had asked me, and I'd worked with Aaron before. He had movement directed me in a play I did in the Lear, and he asked me to come in and audition for it. And I read the script and I was like, this is mad. Like, what is going on? I couldn't really, like, I was like, what is going on in this? But then I just fell in love with her. So that was probably the most exciting part of it, because Masha's, she's just reckless and fun, and she loves so hard, but yet she is so strong-willed, and she feels like such an outsider within this community. And I think, weirdly enough, it was kind of good that I was from Dublin, going down to these like Cavan lovers. I just felt like the Jackie. I just come down for, like, to do the film. And no, I'm joking, everyone was lovely to me. But I think that was really good for it as well. And like just how isolated Jimmy felt, I think she felt that as well.
Yeah, she's an absolutely brilliant role. Like, and like I've seen in things like Rosie and stuff before as well. But this, like, it's interesting you say that, kind of coming in as an outsider role, because again, not to over labor the kind of Western thing, but she did feel like that kind of outsider as well in town. She could be like, you know, the saloon girl or something like that in the old Western thing, like with the heart of gold. But she was just a really brilliant character. Like, how did you kind of get into character in her? Did you do much prep on the accent, or?
Yeah, like, of course I would have. I worked with a guy called Ed in Topshop for a long time. He was in the stockroom, and he was from Poland. So I'm not like, you know, like, yeah, like Eddie helped me a lot. And then also, we kind of never decided how long she was living in Cavan. So, you know, like, because like sometimes she'd pick up little weird things. And yeah, the accent was fun. The first line I said in the whole thing was, "How many children of Prague have you got?" So I had to keep going back to that every time of how I said that. So I just feel like in the corner trying to hear myself say that again. But yeah, no, she's fun. She's just fun and wild. But I think she's a huge heart as well.
And she's a great character, because I think, like Philip was saying about these communities in Ireland, small ones, they can just be GA and then the local, you know, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael councillors and all the church and all this. And I think there's been a huge breath of life brought into a lot of these places by characters, like not necessarily exactly like Masha, but this kind of influx of people who are more interesting to people like Philip growing up.
Completely, but it's also hard to have a conversation about, like, and which is amazing that it doesn't talk about her mother or her ex-boyfriend or anything like that. And I do want to talk about that, but yet we shouldn't have to talk about that. Do you know that kind of way? So
yeah,
do you know, like, that's what's mad. Yeah. And Philip must have wrote this maybe 4 years ago, which was completely forward thinking. And Philip's brilliant to work with because he just lets you play, which is great. I'll give you a few notes like here and there. But yeah, we had a ball, and like, it's so much fun to work off the two lads as well. Like, they're brilliant in it. So you got so much off them.
Well, you're all brilliant, and clearly you had that rapport. Kieran, the guys mentioned you were the last to come on board, which I find hard to believe, because like yourself and Aaron, like, just seemed like brothers to me. I kind of had to check the credits the first time watching, going like, wait, are they? How did it come your way, and how did you feel about Damien?
Yeah, it came my way pretty. I was eating pizza on my couch, and Phil said, "We're filming in Cavan and we need to fill a part," and that was it. It was like 2 days to read the script and look at everything, and then on Monday I was on set. That was it.
What about your first day though, Kieran? Do you want to talk about that? The first shot.
Yeah, well, the first thing I shot, like, I mean, when you see me hopping up into screen, like, that's the first time. It was the first thing I did. So it was real trial by fire, and then the fight immediately after that shot was the first thing. And I'd never met Aaron before. You know, I'd seen him on stage plenty of times, and I was a big fan. So I was just looking forward to getting my hands on him.
That's fantastic. I'm just going to talk a little bit now about the shoot itself. Like, so firstly, if I can go back to Emma and Tamryn, like you mentioned, you kind of came in just around the prep time, I suppose, before shooting. Like, what was it like kind of coming in? Like, did you guys know Cavan much? Had you much like time in there? And how did you come into kind of what seems like a juggernaut that was on the tracks already?
We came in and we just knew nothing, and it was so great. Every moment was a learning moment. Every moment was like a complete like eyes wide. We'd never been out to Cavan, so we went out, and we had Karina Charles, who was an associate producer on it, and and she on the ground knows everybody, knew everyone, everything. She was our kind of our lady on the ground, and I think without her we would have been lost in terms of like the connections we needed in Cavan on just a day-to-day basis. But yeah, like the whole thing was really wild. I mean, I think like we said yes, and then it was kind of rolled into Christmas, didn't it? And so we kind of like, Christmas is a hard time to get things up and off the ground, and I think every day it was probably like 15-hour days for weeks and weeks, like just trying to get our heads around how to get it off the ground, and pulling in what ultimately was mostly a Dublin-based team that then went up and stayed in Cavan for the technical side of the shoot. So like camera, sound, all of that side of things needed to be kind of filled out just before we went up. And yeah, like I think everything was just an adventure. Like I remember going up and doing the prep, doing the tech with the rain machine, and seeing Shane rock up with this rain machine and just being like, what are we doing? It was freezing cold, and like there was like ice and snow, and we're pumping rain out, and we're like, we're gonna stick the actor underneath that. And that's, you know, and then Aaron was in rain for 3 weeks. I remember you had that shocking cold. You were so sick.
You had like a sinus infection starting the shoot, didn't you?
And you never complained about it, and I loved
He
you.
never complained.
Yeah, I remember seeing Aaron after filming, and I was like, "You look amazing! Oh my god, you look
Aaron,
great."
like
Every time I see you now, that's my like feeling. But
Yeah.
Cavan is great. I would love to go back to Cavan to shoot there. Everything there, it's like being out in the Wild West. Like it's brilliant, and I think you learn. Like, I feel like I learned a lot being up there, just seeing how people are so supportive of one another. You know, people rolled in and started volunteering to cook for us, you know, just because they heard it was a good time. And there was, you know, John Connon, was he like a previous antiques dealer, and he let us just use his house as a production base, and he made sure the fire was kept on for us. And yeah, it was just like mad. And then we came back for pickups, and Karina was on maternity leave, and we were like, oh God, you know, we're gonna have to go in there and talk to the people. And we went around Cavan looking for this car that we had in the beginning of the film. We'd lost the contact for it, and you know, we ask one person, and then they ring the person they know, they ring another person, they ring another person, and then we get the car. So it's just like, it's just a great place to be in. It's just a ball every time.
Well, as someone whose father used to drive us from West Cork to Cavan every summer for holidays as a child, it definitely struck that chord to me of just like, has that beautiful community spirit, and it really took me back there a little bit. It was beautiful. You've mentioned the rain, and we'll definitely come to the rain machine as well. But I just want to talk about the shoot, Philip. So like, was it 3 weeks you shot for? Am I right in that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then we came back for some pickups then as well for a few days.
That's
that
not the
only
time
3
period
weeks?
in general, but 3 weeks is.
Yeah, it was only 3 weeks.
Oh my God, I felt like I was there for 4 years. No,
we did 6-day weeks, so it was very like it was you know, I think ultimately we shot for 22 days, but it was like a very short period of time ultimately.
Wow. And like Philip, you mentioned like a lot of the community rode in and all that as well. I mean, it must be interesting kind of with that great kind of community work, and I definitely want to see this 3-day 150 person Frankenstein as well. But just, I suppose when you've got that goodwill and help from people is great, but then you have to kind of schedule and block them all off and things as well, and get them all to kind of do what you wanted. Like how was that on set? Like were you very like, okay, you all know your places at this point, or what was the shoot like, I suppose, working in Cavan?
Yeah, no, it was great. Everyone was really invested in it and was excited about it. I hadn't done a shoot, like, it was probably about a year since I'd done a theater show, so I kind of, people weren't, they were sick of me. It was kind of, they'd forgotten about, they were probably more enthusiastic of doing something big again. But it was interesting working with the community cast in the sense that we could really only shoot the crowd scenes on Saturdays and Sundays. So our Saturdays were so packed. It was just like the most outrageous, the amount we had to pack in on those days. But I remember like the last scene where it's the fight scene where everyone comes out to take a puck at Aaron Monaghan. But it was just, I remember going into the room and describing what the scene was, and just the energy was just, everyone was really pumped and excited for it. So, I mean, everyone really made my job easy across the board. So it was kind of an effortless job, really. But they came out and they did that scene over and over again in the rain. And I don't know, it's incredible what the people gave to it. But it's not just the people that you see on the screen. It's like my brother was production designer and he had an army of volunteers building the sets and painting the sets and getting the props as well. Different theaters around the area were rowing in with the costume as well. So yeah, it was a wonderful, like it's very heartwarming and to see such a community spirit behind this project. And yeah, so I'm just so grateful for everyone that what they've given to it, and thankfully the film turned out all right.
It certainly did. And just to go back to something with the cast as well, Ashley mentioned that you were very good at, like, you'd have a few notes and you'd let them play a bit. Like, were you okay with them like improvising a bit, or was it like do one as it's written, take one for yourself kind of thing? What was your approach to working with them?
Yeah, I think we'd done a few read-throughs. So we'd done a couple of read-throughs, and then I met, we kind of done some table work, I think in Aaron's kitchen. And so
we did
with Aaron and Liz and Lorna, and we went through the different scenes. So I felt like a lot of that kind of what the scenes were typical was done, and then I kind of left it open, left it kind of free to them to kind of. There was times where I just had to give some notes on it. Kieran came in a little bit late, so there's probably a little bit more talking with Kieran on set. But in general, I think Aaron's one of the best actors in the country. I mean, I wrote him with the character in mind. He is the spirit of Jimmy Cullen, and Aislinn's the same with Masha. So I wanted them to bring as much to the table as possible and to feel kind of some sort of freedom in the role as well.
I'm going to ask you guys about that then, Aaron / the spirit of Jimmy Cullen. How was that for you? Like, because obviously you've been with Jimmy for a while and kind of prepping for him, and how was it when the cameras actually started rolling and kind of embodying that character? Because there's like one thing I'm fascinated by, there's a huge amount of comedy going on, but he's almost a straight man, but there's a huge darkness and pathos to him as well, and that must be a difficult balance to strike.
Yeah, well, it is a difficult balance, but it's also a kind of gorgeous challenge. Like, the whole way through, I kept on saying that to myself. Exactly what you said. He is the straight man, and like he's, there's obviously, if you're in that state of mind, you could call somebody crazy, theoretically, but he's in a world of crazy people, and he's in some respects the sanest one there. So like the challenge for me was to try not to compete comedically with what was going on around me, and just so like in many respects my job was easy. I was hoping that that the overall arc of the character, that journey, wouldn't just be a straight line or a flat line, and that the whole thing wasn't going to come across that he was just depressed. Yeah. But like there's so much in it. When I look back on it, like there's such an amazing journey that Philip kind of gives that character to go on, and like it's from the darkest place where, like, I mean, I usually get cast in very, very physical, high energy roles, and it was like, I think as an actor it's always great to challenge yourself. So we shot a lot of the kind of more somber, morose scenes at the top of the shoot, so I kept my energy really, really low. And that was, I just think as an actor, it's always good to do the opposite of what you usually do. So it was an absolute joy. And then he's also threaded enough dream sequences and theatricality throughout the film that like you can play with. And thankfully as well, like myself and Kieran did have a kind of a brilliant connection from the minute we started slapping the heads of each other on, which was literally Kieran's first moment on screen. It was just literally diving in, and I went, oh, I get this guy, and thankfully I'd known Ash and I'd known Liz. So like the connection and the chemistry was there, and we could kind of have a bit of crack with it. And we had, as Philip had said, we'd done a lot of reading and road testing of the script. So like the lines were, you didn't feel the need to improvise or improve on his dialogue, Yeah, it was just a dream to do. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't challenging, because like, doing the film, as you said, Emma, like is in 22 days or 3 weeks, and working 6 days. And like usually when you'd be going home at 8 o'clock, we would suddenly have a unit move to a different town and be shooting like it was crazy hours, and it was cold, and it was like wet and all of those things. But it was every day. Like I went home to my mother at like 2 o'clock in the morning every morning, buzzing, absolutely like knackered and like exhausted, but buzzing, and telling her, trying to explain what we got on camera that day. And anytime you felt like, oh, I don't know if I want to do any more of this, you'd look at the monitor and you'd see what Bershi, the cinematographer, had got, what that crew had put on that screen. And you just went, this is going to be amazing. Like apart from Cavan being the other star of the film, Bershi's cinematography and what his crew got out of it was just, we all felt that from the beginning. We were like, I can't believe I'm going to be in a film that's going to look like this. So
Bertie is certainly, I think, one of the best cinematographers up and coming in the country. I've seen like a lot of their work lately, and it's terrific. So I'll definitely come to that in a second, but it's great to hear you mentioned how much that inspired you. Kieran and Aisling, I'm just going to come to you for a minute before I definitely start talking about, apart from Cavan, the other star of the show, The Rain. But Kieran as well, it's just interesting, like what Aaron said, like because the two of you felt like brothers as soon as I saw you on screen, and it's, I imagine you didn't have time for chemistry tests too much or anything like that, or chemistry readings or anything like that. You just went straight into it, because I swear to God, I generally thought you were brothers. It's how was that for you coming in, and like that energy, like as Aisling mentioned, feeding off Aaron and the rest of the cast?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was lucky when I've majority of my acting experience in the entirety of it prior to Redemption was in theatre, and a good chunk of that was with Phil. So we were good friends before this, and I knew the Joe, Noel, Shane, Phil's family, his parents. I knew everybody. I knew a lot of people, so I was quite nervous coming in. So the combination of kind of being friends and very fond of the majority of the people working on the film already, and getting thrown into such a physical scene right off the bat, I think did good to knock off any cobwebs and just get comfortable with it.
You hadn't done much screen stuff, Kieran, had you?
None, no.
Like I think it's so impressive. Like Kieran literally came in like a couple of days before he had to shoot this entire feature film, and it was not a bother. Like I think it's just so impressive.
That is like especially impressive coming like from like a theater point of view, like to kind of hit something like this. And like, I often find like you can often tell sometimes when someone's like going between one and the other, have a come from one, sometimes that there's a little bit more gesturing or a little bit more something, but like I had to, like as I said, I had to look up. I was like, where's this guy been?
Yeah.
And Aisling, to you as well. Like again, I suppose that's a question I'd like to ask you as well. You've done a lot of theatre work as well, I believe, and obviously with Philip, but what's the difference for you as an actor between something like that and then playing Masha in this? Like, is it a different kind of mechanism you have to kind of tap into, or is it something you're comfortable shifting in and out of?
I don't know. I think the amazing thing about Masha is she's unapologetic, and I think it's a very Irish thing. Well, I'm really apologetic. Like I'm very forward naturally as a person, but then at the same, they're all having a giggle. Do you see that? I'm spiky. I know, I'm joking. I would be, but I'm apologetic as in like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. But she's not apologetic in her sexuality herself. She just embodies herself so well. So that for me was actually really hard to get into quite quickly. But then otherwise, I think Erin and I were talking about this before. When it comes to acting, yes, of course, there's a difference between stage and camera in maybe intensity, how much you push it out. But in reality, if you're playing with truth and sincerity and you have a brilliant script and you're right for the role, there's not a huge difference, I don't think, because you're still doing the same job, essentially. And I think with that, also, again, I didn't know anyone down there. So the only one I knew was Erin. So I think I was like a little bit of glue to him after a while. You know, like,
Sure,
you know,
didn't
so
mind.
well, I'd say his head was wrecked, but anyway, like, so then I got to know everyone, and everyone was really brilliant. But we have to go back to Bertie as well again. Of like, I remember seeing stills after, I think it was the second day, and also like this house that we were in was a shell, and it was completely dressed. Like, I mean, like the work that was done on this was incredible. Like it was. I walked into the, I couldn't believe it when they took the dressing off this house. I couldn't believe it. I was like, who did that? That was amazing. And then the first day I got down there, it was snowing, and you had to be outside in a red dress pretending that it was really warm and grand. Like, so that was the fun we had as well.
Well,
I
we're
have
going to
to
go into that.
echo just what everyone's saying about the monitor and the stills being like really integral to motivating people. Like, I feel that I heard many crew members say that, so what kind of kept you going after incredibly long days that rolled into other incredibly long days was genuinely feeling like you were making something completely new and special and unique, and just you know, you'd be in the midst of it, and it's very emotional. It's like making films is such an emotional experience for everyone across all the departments and the cast. It's tiring and it takes a lot from you, and in the middle of all of that, when you've kind of rolled into like a third or fourth day of like going over, or just like being in the rain, being in the cold, being outside, I think people were genuinely inspired by what we were getting, and people were genuinely like, I mean, and there were people, we were really lucky with some of the crew we got on who were very experienced and had worked on much bigger projects, and they're, you know, they're working on this low budget indie Irish film being made in kind of the middle of nowhere in their minds to a certain extent, and they're like not used to the conditions maybe, and what's kind of keeping everyone going is just, this is mad. Like, are we really getting this? Is this really happening? And it's like, it is. And like, you could go over and look at the monitor and watch what everyone's doing on camera, and watch what we're getting with the performances, with the production design, with the lighting, and be really genuinely inspired. Like, I was inspired constantly, and just being like, this is happening. You know, we're really making something special. It was a really, really special. And me and Emma talk about it all the time. We'll never do something like that again. Never. It'll just never happen like that again. It just wouldn't be possible. It took all of the right things lining up for everyone to be there on the same page, saying yes to the maddest things again and again and again and again. And it was, yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, it was very familial experience.
Like, just let's okay, I'm going to come back to the rain in a second. A great question here from Ronan Tynan on that, but they've been mentioned a few times now. It's like your DOP Bertie and your brother Joe, isn't it? Philip, the production designer. Like, the film, like, looking like $1 million still sounds like a low budget film, but considering what you had, it looks like $1 million. Like, it really does, especially in those kind of more surreal sequences. They're just so beautifully done. Like, in terms of the aesthetic, like, did you have long conversations beforehand with your DOP and production designer as well about the aesthetic you wanted? Did you have like that all down as well as the kind of story and stuff?
Yeah, I think it's lovely to hear that. I mean, one of the great love stories is Bertie's photography and Joe's production design, and seeing that. And there was a genuine excitement between the two of them when you saw everything on the monitor. And but yeah, my brother Joe is an interesting one, because we've almost a shorthand in what we make, because he's done a lot of sort of set design for theatre shows before. We knew the locations inside out from around County Cavan as well. and we knew the color palettes that we were going after. So myself and my brother were probably working on it for an unusually long time running into it. And then Bershie, I went to see a short film at the Clonus Film Festival. It was called Wave. And I just loved the photography and the style of it. And then when Tamryn mentioned about the cinematography of Bershie Water that was worked on this film, I was like, he's in my head, this is the man, because I loved the aesthetic of it. And then initially, when we had a conversation, we were on the same page of what we were trying to do, that it felt like a Western. That was one of the major aesthetics that we were going after. And just, it was a true collaboration. We were able to bounce ideas off each other. And it was a joy to work with him and Joe the whole time. So it was, I think we were very lucky that people just gelled straight away on everything.
Fantastic. Like, because it really does look fantastic, I have to say. Like, it is such an incredible aesthetic, and like even the color palette is absolutely wonderful in it. I do have a question here from Ronan Tynan. He starts with a statement. So he says, bizarre, absurd, and should not have been remotely credible, but the emotion induces make the whole thing so real. It's the essence of good comedy. Well done, all involved. I hate rain, and the rain became a character in the film. What was the inspiration for that? Is there some Irish mythological reference there I'm missing? So was there like, so, or is it just that Cavan's rain?
Well, I mean, there's that too. It does. I don't know. It seems, yeah. It does rain a lot in Ireland. I guess it's a kind of a bit of a parody on Irish rain. But I think, you know, extreme. There's a literary device that in books like where there's extreme weather, like extreme rain or extreme snow, it's kind of to represent the other world encroaching into our world, and that was kind of.
Fallacy, is it?
What's that?
The pathetic fallacy, is that what it's called?
Yeah, you're possibly, yeah. I remember, I know the Dead was that, you know, the famous reference when the snow's coming and it's the other world encroaching into our world. And that always stayed with me when I heard that as well. And that's sort of been a symbol of the strange supernatural undercurrent in the film kind of encroaching into our world as well. And there's the obvious symbol as well of Jimmy's depression and the sadness coming through as well. But as well as that, it's just, and one of the early titles for Redemption of a Rogue is A Redemption of a Rogue, a blues opera, and having the rain thundering down, and it's just so beautiful on camera as well, and having such texture, and they were all kind of things that were part of together, but certainly the mood of the film, to have it under that rain, and that sort of other world kind of coming in our world, they were all kind of elements that were important.
It reminded me of at the end of Unforgiven, another Western where the rain just completely changes the kind of tone of it, and it just worked phenomenally. Tamryn and Emma, you mentioned at the top of the talk a bit about the kind of rain machines and all that and the budget. Do you want to speak a little bit about the process involved there on that?
We Googled how much it was to rent a rain van. No, we went to look up rain. We were like, oh, we can't do it. So, but there was Shane Carroll is the rain man. Like, he built all these rain rigs himself, and him and his team. I mean, one of the scenes, you know, the big fight sequence at the end where they're all on the street and they're really going for Jimmy. There's just a big JCB in the middle of the road that he had filled up full of water, and he made sure it was going to go across evenly. So like there was real artistry with the rain rigs, and then he'd specially rain rig each window if we were inside a house, and you know, it was just incredible like what was done. I mean, and it's all like a testament to him, to Shane, and his abilities and his mad brain as well.
One of my favorite things about shooting in Cavan was the sense that you'd be like, oh, okay, I don't know if we're going to be able to make it rain. And then like Phil or Joe be like, Shane will do that for you. Don't worry. Like, Shane will get that right. Don't worry. Like Shane will sort that out, or Joe will sort that out. And that was like the feeling about every problem that arose, was that like, there is somebody here who's going to try problem solve this if we just kind of like give it out to the group at large and like figure it out. And that was the feeling all the time, was like, no, we'll figure it out. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. And that was how you came to rely on some of the crew there. I mean, I even remember, it was kind of taking a side, like sort of sidestepping, but it's just that feeling of being like these, you know, very reliable, like innovative, smart people that you could call with any problem. So much so that I became so reliant on calling Joe or Shane that when I crashed my car in the middle of shooting, they were the first people I called. I'd only met them a few weeks before, and I was like, Shane, I crashed my car, what do I do? And they're like, Joe, I crashed my car, what do I do? Like, that was what had kind of happened out there, was that sense that like everyone was like, gonna jump in. And Shane was one of those guys who kind of just come to the table with mad solutions to problems. including
Yeah, it was
Ryan.
like Phil said earlier, I think everyone working on the film was a problem solver and also just really smart, really had loads of creative thinking. Everyone just threw their hands in. I think there's like a big sense of ownership over this film that I think is shared between everybody. Like this isn't any one person's thing, you know. I think everyone felt it was really a shared experience.
Well, speaking of shared experiences, the film played in Galway. Obviously, it was during the height of COVID-1, let's call it. And
Best one. Yeah.
Yeah, it could have I think it premiered online and stuff. But like the response from audiences has been like really, really strong. I mean, it won the best first feature and best feature there, and like it clearly read like, and that's an audience award as far as I know. It clearly resonated with audiences, and obviously it's been cinema since and on Netflix. There's something I'm fascinated by in these films that, as you mentioned at the start, Philip, it's so like specifically Cavan in so many ways that you can be so specific to something that it rings true to everyone, if you know what I mean. It becomes incredibly universal. And I just want to ask you, Philip, like, how's the response been from people here and abroad? I believe it's one of the festivals abroad as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's like, it is very specific and it is very local. And Tom Murphy, you know, is one of my heroes. He always, the local is universal. And I think that was so I was never too worried about it being specific, actually. I wanted it to be specific. But one of the most interesting things and exciting things that happened was when we watched the film in Kymilos in Greece. So I hadn't seen the film with anybody except, you know, Alan Quigley, the editor, or in post-production, because everything was online up to that point. So the first time I got to see the film was on a beach in Kymilos, on an island in Greece, on a full moon night with the screen on the beach, and the water lapping in kind of towards us, and watching with these, you know, with the Greeks. And they were laughing from the very start. They're even laughing at GEA jokes. I couldn't believe it. So that was such a relief, that just to hear that sound as a communal experience. But the fact that people from another country were really getting the humor in it.
Emma and Tamryn, like, that's wonderful to hear about the Greeks getting the GA humor. But did you know, having read the script, that it would have that kind of international appeal when you came on board?
I think we had hoped. I mean, to be fair, like, I think we're pretty ambitious people, and Phil is as well. And I think that's where like the connection happened early on for the three of us, was the ambition that we all had for the film and the future that we saw for the film. I think we really had hoped that it would travel and that it would connect particularly with like British audiences and North American. But it was a surprise. I think Greece is a great example from Phil. It's like, it is surprising when it starts tapping into all these other cultures, you know. It's amazing.
They love the dark humor.
Yeah, they certainly do. And maybe the cast, Aaron, Aisling and Kieran, like, how's the response been for you, especially now that it's on Netflix? And like, I just don't see turn on any social media without someone, you know, talking about, you know, or seeing Redemption Rogue every day on it. How's it been for you guys, having been part of such, like, what Tamryn and Emma are describing as a very special, once in a lifetime kind of process making this film? How's the kind of response been for you? Aisling, maybe we'll start with you.
My mom has been all over. I think she shares it every 2 minutes on Facebook.
Yeah.
I know, like, it's like, no, really good. Like, it's it's always funny because you filmed it 2.5 years ago. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes, like, I think it's coming up to 3 years now in January, actually, that we filmed it. So it's funny, you kind of forget about it. And then it's like a lovely little present then, because it comes back and you're like, oh, cool. But again, with Philip, I went over to London. We did it for the Irish London Festival, and it was the first time I watched it with people who don't know me, don't know who I am. And I think I had blonde hair at the time, so I don't think they thought I was in it. And I sound not the same. But they really liked it and they really enjoyed it. And it was the first time I went, oh God, that's so lovely to hear other people enjoying it. I guess it was just different. It was just, I guess, because as an actor, I've never experienced that before, because I've never watched something I've been in with people I don't know. Because usually I'm either on the stage or not watching it.
That's the best thing. It should be a communal experience, like theater, like that. It should, like, it does come alive in that room.
Oh my God, yeah, it amplifies it. Like, it actually makes it visceral, which I sometimes don't know if film can do that, and it did. You know.
And Kieran, for you, how's the response been for you? And have you seen it with an audience of people who don't know you?
No, the only time I've seen it on the big screen was at the premiere in the Lighthouse, and I didn't get a chance to see it again. I wanted to, but but like Ash said, I've never had this experience before of, because when you do theater, it's gone, and this is the first time I've been in a film, and it is wonderful that it's just there out in the world for people to come to in their own time, and it does come back to you like a nice little present. And yeah, I've been getting people, friends of mine who I haven't talked to in a while, and family members getting on to me saying that they really enjoyed it, and I'm just so proud to be, a part of it, because I just think it's a fantastic film. And having worked with, Phil for so long, and the whole crew and network of artists that he's got there, it's just a cool thing. I think of this, I don't know if I said this to Phil, because throughout the years, Gonzo theater has such a tone and aesthetic and vibe, and I just think of it as like Gonzo the film. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of that thing for me. So yeah, no, I love it. The response has been great, and I'm super grateful and happy to be a part of it. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! And Aaron, for you, or Aaron, sorry. For you.
Sorry, that's okay. Yeah, like usually when as Aisling says, it's such a long when you film something and before you see it, like the gap is so big time-wise. When I film something, I genuinely like forget about it, and that's out of a sort of sense of self-preservation, because there are less so with stage stuff, but with screen you're at the mercy of the editor, you're at the mercy of the director. So like you have very little control as a performer over what you can do. You can put your best out there and they can make you look really good or really bad or whatever it is, and they can save your performance. But with this, I don't know, I was really interested in how this turned out, because like from start to finish, the way Philip described it to me, it was captured that way on the day, whatever burst she got. So then I was really worried then that it wouldn't translate in the editing process. And like the editor, Alan Quigley, did an amazing job with Philip and got exactly like Philip had written it that way, and that ended up on screen. So whatever I wanted to end up on screen kind of ended up that way, and I was really proud of it. But I still watched it on my own because I was really nervous. I think I watched it with Ash and Liz, because I kind of felt, I was really glad, funnily enough, that we didn't go to the FLA. I was glad that we watched it online and we didn't have to do the whole, you never saw a more relieved actor in your life, to not have to go and sit with a load of people watching. I think it was excruciating. And then like a year later, we got to watch it in Cavan and watch it in the Lighthouse. And at that point, I was really assured of the film and I was really, really proud of it. So yeah, it was really weird to hear people laughing, so yeah, I'd love to see it again, actually, with a big packed house, because I think we were only allowed 40 in those screenings. But yeah, I'm really proud of it. And
you should all be very proud of it. It's a really, really terrific piece. And the more I hear you talk about it and read about it, like what a fantastic achievement, but what a beautiful sounding achievement it was, or job. I've just got time for one or two questions here from people. So I've got one here from Jade Beechenor, who goes, this is probably for you, Philip, maybe Tamryn and Emma. I'd love to hear that the project was done on such a restrained budget. Would it have changed much if there was more funding? Philip, like if you were given $1 million towards it, would it have been much different?
I guess I don't, to answer that, I really not, depends on the budget. If it's 100 million, maybe. I don't think so, not that much, to give a quick answer, because we never really thought, okay, we can't do this because we don't have enough money. We found a way to do it. People were able to think on their feet. Everyone was being inventive. So I don't think it would have been that much different. I mean, we would have maybe had a longer time for the shoot, possibly, but I don't think it would have been that much different. I mean, we were just so happy with what we're getting, and we never tried to cut a corner because of budget. That was never the case.
We would have had like more keep warms for our actors.
More hot water bottles for Aaron. A nicer trailer.
Yeah, we would have like a trailer. It would be great.
Warmer
Yeah.
in general. Just more comfortable and warm.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Like, it sounds like a film that could only have been made this way. And I think we spoke to the producer, David Collins, last year, the year before. He said, like, when something magic like that happens on a film where you, by all accounts, it shouldn't, he calls it grace, that there's just something that comes together, a gestalt that's bigger than all of you, that like really comes together. And this is what I'm getting from this film, certainly, and you guys behind it. It's a wonderful project. If anyone is tuning in or watching this and recording, you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. It's definitely worth your Friday, Saturday evening with people. I would recommend, even in the sitting room. It's great. But guys, we're out of time there. I've really enjoyed talking to you all, and thank you so much for taking the time. It's been fascinating to talk about this, and congratulations again on a great film. Thank you at home for tuning in. We're going to be back tomorrow, where I'm going to be talking to some of the team behind Boys from County Hell, and then we have Night Ride on Thursday and Bring Out the Fear on Friday. So please keep an eye on IFTA.ie for more. But for now, I'd like to say a big thank you to the incredible team behind Redemption of a Rogue, a blues opera, which I'm just going to call it from now on. Thank you, Kieran, Aisling, Aaron, Emma, Tamryn, and Philip, and congratulations on the film, and thank you for joining us.